Ever notice how we just take software for granted? Like it magically appears on our phones and laptops?
Yeah.
Today we're doing a deep dive that's going to totally change how you see that little app icon.
Yeah, it's easy to forget there's a whole hidden world
Yeah.
behind those digital tools we use every day.
Right. We're diving into a blog post from the Dojo MX by Hector Patricio,
Hmm.
a tech leader who really breaks down what software developers really produce. And spoiler alert, it's way more interesting than just lines of code.
Oh, absolutely. Hector uses a great analogy in the blog,
Yeah.
comparing the software you see on your screen to the tip of an iceberg.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's lurking beneath the surface?
Well, we all know developers write code, right?
Right.
But that code itself isn't something you directly interact with.
So it's like a recipe, not the actual meal.
Perfect analogy. What bridges that gap? What turns code into something you can actually use are executables. Think of the moment you download a program. That file you're downloading, that's an executable. It takes those code instructions and translates them for your specific device.
So that's one layer down. We've got the software we use,
Okay.
powered by executables, which come from...
The source code itself, and this is where it gets really interesting. Think of source code as a living document full of decisions, potential, and the possibility for evolution.
It's funny, you don't often think of something as technical as code as being alive.
It is. And here's a key distinction. With open source software, that code is freely available. Anyone can dig in, tinker with it, even improve it, kind of like sharing and adapting a recipe with friends. But with closed source software, that recipe is locked away. You get the final dish, but the process is a secret.
That makes a lot of sense. So knowing whether the software you're using is open or closed source adds a whole other layer to think about. But either way, before it even gets to that executable stage, someone's got to wrangle all that code right. Yeah, like somebody's got to keep track of all of it, organize it.
Exactly. It's like any creative process, really. You don't just want the finished product. You want to understand the thinking behind it.
Right.
And that's where documentation comes in. It might not be the most glamorous side of software development, but it's crucial. Think of it as the architect's blueprints for a building. Without them, even the most beautiful structure would be impossible to maintain or modify.
Okay, so documentation is like the unsung hero of the software world. What kind of things get documented?
Everything. You've got user manuals. We've all seen those, for better or worse. But they're also in-depth technical specs, design decisions, even the reasoning behind certain choices. It's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for anyone who might work on the software in the future.
Speaking of teamwork, Hector's blog post makes an interesting point about that. He says the development team itself is a product of the software development process.
It's true. A team that's worked together builds up this incredible shared knowledge base. They develop efficient workflows. They can practically read each other's minds. That kind of synergy is invaluable, especially when you're talking about complex software projects.
It reminds me of when you start a new job. There's always that period where you're just trying to figure out who does what and how things work.
Exactly. Yeah. A well-oiled team can mean the difference between a project launching smoothly and a total disaster. And not just in terms of efficiency. Remember those undocumented decisions we talked about? A strong team carries that context, that understanding, even if it doesn't always make it into the official documents.
So we've got the software itself, the executables, the code, the documentation, the team dynamics. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. But this whole time I keep thinking about that knowledge creation idea. There's something really profound about that.
It is. It's easy to overlook because it's happening inside the developer's head, but it's arguably the most impactful product of the entire process. Every time a developer solves a problem, they're building new neural pathways, new understandings.
So it's not just about the code they're writing in that moment. It's about the knowledge they're accumulating along the way.
And here's where it gets really fascinating.
It really is, like you're saying, they build up this whole library inside their brains.
Yeah, and like you said, it changes how you think, even if you're not consciously aware of it all the time.
I'm starting to see how this connects to the bigger picture. It's like that feeling when you learn a new language. Sure, you might forget some vocabulary, but the way you think, the way you approach problems, it's fundamentally changed.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That shift in thinking, that's the invisible product, the knowledge gained. And here's the kicker, that knowledge doesn't just disappear after the project is done. It feeds into the next challenge, the next innovation. It's like this constant upward spiral.
So investing in developers in their learning is really about investing in the future of software itself.
Absolutely. And remember that open source concept we talked about. When developers share their code, They're also indirectly sharing that accumulated knowledge, accelerating the progress of the entire field.
Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing ripple effect.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes. I always thought of software development as this very technical, almost solitary endeavor, but it's so much more collaborative and interconnected than I realized.
It really is. As users, we tend to focus on the end product, that shiny new app or website. But there's this whole hidden ecosystem of knowledge, teamwork, and constant learning that makes it all possible.
So next time I'm scrolling through my phone, I'll be looking at those app icons a little differently, knowing there's a whole lot more than meets the eye.
And maybe a newfound appreciation for all those developers out there, quietly building the future, one line of code at a time.
Absolutely. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. If you're interested in exploring this topic further, we'll be sure to link to Hector Patricio's blog post in the show notes. Until next time, keep those brains engaged, and remember, there's always more to learn.